Good evening. Welcome to the QCIS channel. Where on this channel you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. My name is Leon Jones, and for this week, I'm talking about dendrology. Dendrology is very important as we ID trees. So, as an extension to dendrology, I'm going to talk about forestry. Now, forestry is very, very important. In fact, if you are interested in getting into a curriculum and a career in forestry, one of the best colleges to attend that has a forestry program is Purdue University, right here in Indiana. But when we get into forestry, we talk about logging. Now, trees are a good resource for making wood and paper. Trees are also a good resource for delivering us oxygen while we deliver trees carbon dioxide. Now, unfortunately, in places like California and Canada, where the forest is dry, you get a number of forest fires. So, when we talk about forestry, share my screen and give you a quick definition of forestry. So, we deal with forestry. We're basically talking about the science and practice of planting, managing, and caring for forests to meet human and ecological needs such as timber, harvesting, wildlife, habitat, and of course, recreation. Now, it involves applying scientific, economic, and social principles to ensure forests are a sustainable resource for current and future generations. Now, key activities include forestation, harvesting, preservation, and creating ecosystems that benefit a variety of sources and services. Now, within forestry, you have key aspects. Now, these are very important. Number one is management. And understand that forestry involves managing forests to meet specific goals, such as harvesting lumber, improving wildlife habitat, providing recreation. Now, this includes activities like pruning, thinning, and pest management. Then we get into sustainability. And of course, a core principle of modern forestry is sustainability, meaning managing forests so they can continue to provide desired goods, services, and values for the long term. Then, one thing you need to understand about forests is they have multiple uses. Why? Because forests provide values, many values, and that includes economic values. An example are timber and biomass, environmental values, air and water quality, carbon sequestration, or carbon sequestration, and social, and that deals with the recreation aesthetics, where you have your hiking trails, some of your state parks have some nice forest. I know when I worked for the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, we have plenty of parks that you see beautiful forestry, particularly if you go into the southern counties of Indiana, because they're at a higher elevation. And of course, in that area for recreation, you can do skiing. So, again, when we talk about forest uses, there are multiple uses. Forests provide many values, including economic, timber and biomass, environmental, air and water quality and carbon sequestration, and of course, social. We deal with the recreational aesthetics. Forestry aims to balance these competing interests. Now, there's also a scientific basis. And of course, the science of forestry is what we call silviculture, which applies the principles of silvics. And that's the study of trees and their environment, of course, to manage forests for specific outcomes. And then there are diverse applications. Again, forestry encompasses various fields, including commercial, timber harvesting, urban forestry, that's managing trees in cities, and agroforestry. You're basically combining trees with crops and or livestock. So again, I've given you an overview of what forestry really is and how forestry can benefit human needs economically, scientifically, and of course, socially. Now, where do you find most of your heavy logging when it comes to forestry? Well, if you don't know that answer, I'm going to give you my answer. You're going to find it in places like Maine, the West Coast, like Washington, state of Washington, Oregon, Northern California. And it's a big industry out there. And again, what do you do with forestry? Well, you make lumber, paper, and in some colleges, they actually have an engineering called forestry engineering, paper engineering. And let me tell you this as well. If you're in the chemical and environmental sector, you might even see some information about forestry on the FE exam, which I'll get more into the FE exam in future videos. But what I'm going to do is just continue to give you an insight about forestry. Now, I'm going to share my PowerPoint slide with you. And of course, we're going to get into forestry from a little deeper perspective. Again, and I'm going to get into the basics of forestry. Now, of course, this isn't mine, but it's the same. I used to live in Pennsylvania. So this is from the Lycoming County Conservation Watershed or the Lehigh County Conservation District. This is by Carrie Ince, who is a watershed specialist. Now, if you're not familiar with Lycoming County, that's up in the area of Montour, Pennsylvania. And for PennDOT, that's where District 3 is in that area. And they have a lot of mountains and forestry in Lycoming County. Now, as we get into basics, what a tree needs to grow, very simple. It needs nitrogen in the atmosphere, nitrogen in plant and animal proteins, as you see this chart. Then you have nitrogen in decaying matter and waste, solids and liquids. Nitrogen fixing bacteria change nitrogen found in the atmosphere into compounds that can be used by plants. Now you see how everything works, and this is chemically how decaying bacteria produces nitrogen gas. And you have nitrogen compounds in soils like ammonia, nitrates, nitrices. You also need sunlight, condensation. You need evaporation, precipitation. You need groundwater. Of course, the groundwater is absorbed by plants. You see, one thing I can tell you about the earth continues to replenish itself. And it all starts with mixing everything, your condensation. Now, what is condensation? I'll tell you what condensation is. Let's say you have a glass of water. It's basically the process of sweating. When you have a glass of water and it's hot, or in your car, you have an air conditioning system, and you see water coming out of your pipes. Well, you put your hand on a pipe and it's wet. That's condensation. That's the sweating of the pipes. But you have that same condensation when it comes to trees. It comes from sunlight, precipitation, evaporation, condensation, groundwater. It's all absorbed by plants. Now, here's a diagram showing functions of different parts of trees. Now, from the bottom, you have your roots. Now, what do your roots do? Absorb food elements through the tiny root hairs, and they also provide anchorage for the tree. Then you have soil. Bacteria and fungi make available soil nutrients. Then the outer bank. Inactive cells form protection for inner bark. Then you have inner bark. It carries food made in the leaves downward to the cambium and stored cells. Then you have your cambium. That's your growing layer of cells, and it basically it divides in the tree to form both the bark and the wood. And then you have your sapwood, carries food and water upward. Your heartwood, inactive cells, it adds structural support. Then, of course, you have your leaves. And what happens with the leaves is, well, the air supplies carbon, the principal food of the tree, which is taken in on the undersurface of the leaves. Then you have your medullary rays. They basically conduct food and water radially. And what that does is it serves in food storage. And when I talk about something that's radial, talk about something that has a radius. Then you have your annual rings. Now, your annual rings of a tree, and this is what you need to know, they can tell you the age of a tree. It's just like if you see the canyons, you can see how the canyons will form with the erosion that has taken place over time. And the type of rocks that you have, igneous and metamorphic rocks, or your rings, indicate growth normally one ring per year. And this is what you have inside a tree. Now, of course, the growth of a tree. You must understand that each year the tree grows two new layers. You have your spring wood. The layer formed in the spring by the cambium grows fast and looks light in color. Then you have your summer wood. The layer formed in the summer grows slower and the cells are smaller so that the layer is much darker in color. Now, what the rings tell you as well is by counting the dark rings, just like I mentioned before, you can tell the age of the tree. Now, the annual rings can also tell you what happened during the tree's life. And also the size and shapes of the ring indicate soil, moisture, and fertility, weather, fire, overcrowding, and of course, insect attacks. Now, forest succession. Again, one must understand that forests are always growing and changing. So we have what we call succession. That's when some trees replace or succeed other trees in the same place. So basically, you have three layers within a forest. You have the canopy or overstory, and that's when you have large trees above the forest floor. Then you have your understory, small trees and bushes under the canopy. And then you have your forest floor, shrubs, wildflowers, and shade tolerant plants. Now, this may come slowly with old age or suddenly after fire or windstorm, but succession never stops. Then you have your forest communities. Now, again, this is in Pennsylvania, where you have two principal forest types in the state of Pennsylvania in the north. And this is what I just finished doing, identifying trees. And some of these trees are very popular. And of course, I lived in Pennsylvania and I've been to this area in Pennsylvania. So in the north part of the state, you have your birch, you have your beech, your maple, and your hemlock forest. In your south, you have your oak, your chestnut, and yellow poplar florist. So, do you know what the Pennsylvania state tree is? That I would have to guess on. But you do have forest resources. And your forest resources, that includes trees, water, wildlife, forage, and of course, recreation. And this is your forest resources, your trees. Now, they're all going to be used for lumber. Now, you have to be careful too when you make lumber from trees because you have to treat the wood because wood does rot and it also gets knots in it as well. Now, as we get back into the resources, common wood products, pencils, paper, bats, rackets, and power poles. Not so common uses. Now, one would never know this, but these not so common uses that come from trees, again, these are not so common uses, but they come from trees. And I didn't even know that. Cattle feed, toothpaste, aspirin, tires, and film. These are all part of forest resources. Now, when we deal with trees, there are nearly 700 species of trees in the US forest, but only 100 species are used in the products that we use regularly. So basically 40 are softwoods, which are pine, hemlock, and cedar used for lumber, plywood, and paper. 60 are hardwoods, cherry, oak, and maple, used for paneling, flooring, and of course, furniture. Now, forest lands are prime sources for water. Trees transpire or give water off through their leaves. Remember the water cycle. So basically, the forest cover can control the amount of water released and quality of water to the nearby waterways. So the forest cover also provides shades to streams. Cold water is very important to fish. So we're dealing with now wildlife. Again, forests and woods are homes to many kinds of animals, large and small. Three basics to habitat: food, water, and shelter. So basically, each stage of forest succession favors certain animals. So through proper management, you can create quality habitat for a large number of wildlife species within the same forest. Again, proper management. And you need that proper management so you can create the quality habitat for a large number of wildlife species within the same forest. Then we get into the forage. Edible plants, forage, are forest resources just as trees are. So, forage includes grasses and buds, shoots, and leaves of woody plants and herbs that can be eaten by livestock or wildlife. And we get into recreation. So basically, the state forest system was established first back in 1898. And this is, I'm dealing with Lycoming County in Pennsylvania, which is home to Montoursville, Pennsylvania. But this is where the forest conservation offices are. Now, each state has its own conservation districts, but it's very important, regardless of where the PowerPoint is coming from, dealing with locality, forestry is all the same. Again, the forest system, which is the state forest system, was first established right around 1900, 1898 to be exact, for the purpose of providing a continuous supply of wood products, protecting watersheds, and providing opportunities for outdoor recreation. Now, today, the state forest comprises over 2.1 million acres and accounts for 12% of the forested area in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So basically, Pennsylvania's state forest represents one of the largest expanses of public interest land in the eastern United States, making it a truly priceless public asset. So now we deal with forest management. So we deal with silviculture and best management practices. That's other best management practices. Now, for the most part, when we talk about best management practices, we are basically dealing with how to protect the construction site from sediment getting into our wetlands and streams. But best management practices aren't only for construction sites, protecting environments, but you have to protect the environment using tactics for the forest, because we want our forest to be around for a long time. Now we have silviculture. What is silviculture? Silviculture is the planting, growing, tending, and harvesting stands of trees. Silviculture systems are methods used to maintain vigor, desired composition, health, and structure in terms of age, species, and size class. Now, how to choose a silviculture system. So basically, when evaluating the site, the forester considers all the physical, chemical, climatic, and biological features of an area that influence the forest regeneration and growth. Of course, other factors are the sensitivity to an area, to soil compaction, erosion, and stream sedimentation. And we have our intermediate treatments, and they're done when the forest is still growing to economic and biological maturity. And also the residual stand will be able to resign. That's resign. The residual stand will be able to resign, or we can say resign, to the increased light, water, and nutrients to reduce competition. Again, the residual stand will be able to resign to the increased light, water, and nutrients to reduce competition. Examples: cleaning, thinning, and improvement cuts. Again, we get other best management practices, BMPs. So you just don't hear best management practices in construction and SWIPs, and I've gone over that in previous videos, but you hear it in forestry. But these best management practices are different. Some examples are fire, fertilizers, plant seedlings, seeding a forest, gathering seeds, and improving trees. BMP, we're going to start off with fire. Prescribed burning is sometimes used, especially in pine forests. The fire exposes the soil, releases nutrients into the soil, and also eliminates some insects and disease and removes undesirable trees and bush. Fires can be as important too in managing wildlife as it is in managing timber and controlling other vegetation. Fertilizers. Fertilizers can be added to the soil. The nutrients are added to the forest soil and picked up through the plant roots. So basically, these healthy trees grow much faster than others. We get into planting seedlings. So this occurs when we deal with harvesting. So basically, after harvesting, a forester may decide to plant seedlings. Why? Because natural seeding may take several years while planting will speed up the process. Attention should be given to the species of seedlings for timber harvest, watershed protection, recreation, and wildlife habitat. Gathering seeds. Pine trees are the easiest to gather seed from. The pine cones ripen in the fall, the cone dries, and the seeds will fall out. The seeds need to be kept in a cool, dry place. They go through a dormant period during the winter. The seeds are then ready to germinate in the spring. Improving trees. Foresters are now using genetic improvement to get better trees. They gather seed from superior trees. They also may artificially pollinate trees to develop superior tree families. Now you have enemies of the forest. And these can really kill off a forest. And we're talking about wildfires and insects. Wildfires and insects. Of course, nearly 9 out of 10 wildfires are generally started by careless people. And that's something. You have lightning out there, but 9 out of 10 wildfires are started by careless people, while only 1 of 10 are caused by lightning. Crown fires can spread over many miles with the right weather and topography of the land. So, like Smokey the Bear used to say, we have to help prevent forest fires. Again, you have your enemies of the forest, your emerald ash borer, your hemlock woolly alligator, your gypsy moth. Now, if you don't know what a gypsy moth is, it starts off as a caterpillar. You may see a looks like a white bag in the trees. Well, those are caterpillars. They're generally brown, and you have a whole white nest of them. And what they're doing, as you know, caterpillars go through their metamorphosis and they become moths and butterflies. But your insects, they can destroy because they bore through the trees. That's how they destroy the trees. You have your Asian longhorn beetle. Now, if you're not familiar with an Asian longhorn beetle looks like, it's got 6 legs, and it's a black beetle. It's not one of the stink bugs because you see a lot of those around, but it's a beetle that definitely eats its way through the trees as well. So basically, when it comes to taking care of forests, you have to also control the pests, because the pests, along with wildfires, will damage your trees. And of course, this this information is still around, came out about 2009, but what I did was give you an overall view on how forestry works. Now, again, when we talk about forestry, to know what it is, we're dealing with the science and practicing of planting, managing, and caring for forests to meet human and ecological needs, such as timber, harvesting, wildlife habitat and creation, and all this. When it comes to forestry, when it is all put together, it involves applying scientific, economic, and social principles to ensure forests are at a sustainable resource for current and future generations. Again, key activities include forestation, harvesting, preservation, and creating ecosystems that benefit a variety of resources and services. So again, the key aspects of forestry, just gave it to you earlier in the video, management. Forestry involves managing forests to meet specific goals such as harvesting timber, improving wildlife habitat, and providing recreation. This includes activities like pruning, thinning, and pest management. And you look at sustainability. It's a core principle of modern forestry, and it's basically sustainability, meaning managing forests so that they can continue to provide desired goods, services, and values for the long term. And there are also multiple uses with forests because they provide many values, including economic, which that includes timber and biomass, environmental, air, water, and carbon uh, sequestration, that's sequestration, and of course, social, which is recreation, aesthetics. So forestry aims to balance these competing interests. And I finally got it right. That is carbon sequestration. Again, that's carbon sequestration. And then you look at the scientific basis. The science of forestry is called silviculture, which applies to the principles of silvics, the study of trees and their environment, to manage forests for specific outcomes. Diverse applications. Forestry encompasses various fields, including commercial. You also have what's commercial timber harvesting, urban forestry, which when something is urban, you're managing your trees in cities, and agroforestry. You're basically combining trees with crops and or livestock. So basically, trees are a good resource, but we have to take care of our forests because you do have a lot of carelessness going on with trees, and trees such as pine trees, they can become dry and fires spread and they do destroy forests. You look at what happened in California, and it happens a lot in California. So we must continue to manage how we work with our forests. And also, finally, trees are a good piece of nature because there are many different breeds or species of trees. I like to say species of trees, many of them. And during the fall, particularly in the Northeast and some areas in the Midwest, the leaves are very, very beautiful when they come down. But if we don't take care of the forest, we won't have them. This is why it's very important to understand what forestry is. Again, you want to go to school to get into forestry. Purdue University here in Indiana is a good choice. And you have to have some certifications if you want to be a forester as well, because forestry is also a science. You deal with biology, you deal with physics, you deal with chemistry, you deal with sustainability. But this video was based on information that I started on dendrology last week, and I just wanted to piggyback off of that topic. And I'm gonna get into other nature as well, the study of plants. I think it's very interesting. But again, thank you for viewing this content on forestry. In the comment section, just tell me what you think, because you know it's Very, 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 very important to understand what's going on in nature around you as well. Again, that concludes this topic on forestry. If you like what I just presented, please like, share, and subscribe. Now, if you're looking for some social and political content, check out my main channel, the 411 Talk Zone Radio Show channel. Now, here's where you can find me. 411 Talk Zone Radio Show, you can find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter, Rumble, and Truth Social. And for the STEM channel, QCIS channel, find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. And again, thank you for taking your time to view this content on forestry as I conclude this video right here, QCIS channel. We're on this channel. You get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening.